Hey guys, welcome to today's episode. I'm super excited because I have a special guest. It's my mama. So we always, FaceTime and chat, and we were like, why don't we just have you on the podcast? So you want to say hi, mama?
Hi, Mama.
Yeah. Super excited to, just ask questions. For me personally, like even just as a daughter, like having this documented of just like, our conversation and asking you certain questions and being able to kind of have fun with this is like the main thing for me. And then for anybody listening, being able to kind of just listen in for fun, get a little bit of a sneak peek on where I got all my awesomeness from.
Aw.
um, and yeah, we'll kind of go from there. But of course, mom, there's so many like certain questions that I just want to ask you, and then we'll have fun with it. Sound
That
good?
sounds, oh yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited.
Okay, cool. So my first question, mother,
Mm,
is we're gonna like I have some questions that are actually about, obviously, you having a family and your favorite
hmm.
memories and things like that. But I also kind of want to go to like prior to like having a family.
Okay.
So obviously I know who your first love was, but I want to kind of just hear the story of like what was it like falling in love? Um who was your first love? I'm assuming it was dad, but you never know. And just kind of hearing like I I've heard this story, multiple times, but just hearing from like your perspective, what was it like falling in love?
Mm,
And what would be your advice for women listening who maybe are single or, they want to have a marriage that lasts very, very long, but maybe they didn't see that growing up. Um,
mhm.
and they're just like, yeah, would be nice, but like I've never seen that happen for me. Maybe they fall in love with the wrong people. So I kind of want to just hear what was it like falling in love with
Mhm.
dad and, what would be your advice for women who are like, wanting to fall in love, but maybe they're just a little tainted.
Ooh, that's a good one. Well, so first of all, I just want to say I'm so excited that we're doing this. I think it's so great that there's platforms like this that can document, you know, moms and daughters talking because I didn't get that opportunity with my mom to really ask her about her life. And I remember you and I a few years ago, remember the journal we started with each other? That I would write in it, and then the next day you would respond, and we just kind of were journaling that. And so this is really awesome, and I love this, and I'm very proud of my daughter, people. So I'm just going to put that in there. So in to answer your question, you know, I think that there is no secret sauce to love. I don't think there's any wrong relationship. I think that everything is there to teach us. Before I met your father, I definitely thought I was in love with someone, and really, and a few times I thought I was in love. In my teenage years, I was totally head over heels with someone, and it was all emotions that can kind of drive you and make you do crazy stupid things. And I did a lot of crazy stupid things, and then I learned from it, and I was like, oh, okay, so this isn't it. And then I fell in love in my 20s, but it was not reciprocated, and I really had to learn from that situation that I needed to get my value and my self-worth from myself, and I needed to really work on myself and become a complete being within my own self, and before I could really open myself to someone else. And when I did that, I was dating. I just, I would date off and on, but just was really getting to know people and would build friendships with other individuals. And so by the time I met your father, who, yes, I do. He is the love of my life. He truly is. I believe in soulmates. He is my soulmate. And anyone can define that the way that they want. But for me, it's just he and I have a level of spiritual connection, soul connection. And I know that can sound very woo woo, but
100%.
there's just, we just choose each other every single time,
Mm,
you know. And I think that's what love is. It's just re-choosing as and allowing each other to grow individually through all of the seasons of life, through when we had kids, when we were just on our own together, when we went through financial struggles together and coming through that, and just, you know, all of the stress that comes upon that, because love is not all ooey gooey wonderful feelings. It's
right.
just choosing this individual again and again, because yeah, I choose you. I can see the value in our relationship, and there is a reciprocity that happens between the two of us that is, you know, we value each other. We truly do. And so I don't know
Yeah.
if that answered anything, but
Oh, it doesn't
that's sort of
matter.
my journey.
No,
Yeah.
I love that. I
And
love
it
what you,
continues, and it continues.
yeah, I love what you said about like, yeah, there's no right or wrong relationship in the sense that for those who are in, no, I'm kidding, who are like, oh, see, it's not the wrong relationship listening to this. No, I'm kidding. Um, but like everything is meant to teach you. And I feel
Right.
like we all in our life have those like top three, not top three relationships, but like it's almost like each relationship is an initiation to
Mm,
growth, until you land in the one where the growth is now meant to be with that person. It doesn't need to be like, you know, I remember even when I first started dating Daniel, I'm like, you wonder, like, is this going to be, where I'm going to help him grow? And then it's like, okay, bye. And, or is he going to help me grow? And then it's like, okay, bye. Like, you kind of wonder, is this going to, well, at least I wonder, is this going to be a relationship where it's like, to the end? Or is it going to be another one of those like life chapter, relationships? And
right.
I feel the same way that you felt with dad of like, no, and me and him say this every day, like we choose each other every day because even you said like you believe in soulmates. I believe in soulmates too. I just believe we don't have one soulmate. I believe we have probably a million soulmates, but we probably meet that person and then we have to choose them every day. Not have to, but we get to and we want to choose
Right.
them every day through the struggles. It's like, I don't care. Like that could be another potential, that could be another potential, that could be another potential. There's going to be potentials all around. The grass will be greener if you want it to be, but like
Right.
I choose you every day. So I
Yeah.
love that. Um
Yeah.
and yeah, I think it was important for me too. Like, I do feel really blessed the fact that I was able to have you and dad, like, um, just growing up, like, having that, just togetherness, right? And seeing,
Mm.
I do believe that, even if you didn't have that growing up, you can still, of course, like have that exposure.
I think that's, you know, it's like you said earlier, everybody has a different life experience. You know, I grew up, my mom and dad, you know, they stayed married and were, you know, I believe that would have stayed married had my mother not passed in 2009. But, you know, to my dad, you know, my mom was his soulmate. But growing up, I wouldn't necessarily look at their relationship and go, "Oh my God, that's what I want."
Right.
I think because I could recognize now as as an older adult that my parents had their own life experiences that was brought into the family dynamic, and I made a decision, um, how I wanted to how I envisioned my family to be. There
Right.
was no communication in my family. There was not, you didn't hear, you know, people saying they love each other. There was no emotional connection there. Unfortunately, my parents were emotionally unavailable. I grew up in the day and age of, you know, children are seen and not heard. And so you kind of grew up in your own little nuclear, your own little bubble within a family, and really no communication. So I made a decision at a very young age that I was going to have a different experience and that my children were going to have a different experience.
Right.
And I think that's why we worked really hard to really make sure that you guys knew you were loved, and witnessing that with, me and your father. So, and I,
Yeah.
I only wanted to say that because I know anyone listening to this, there, there's no pie in the sky. It's just what you decide you
Mhm.
want and what you're worthy of and what you value, and making that with someone else, making that with yourself, and however that looks. So, because we
Yeah.
all didn't grow up in a, not all of us grew up in a happy, I think most of us grew up in dysfunctional families.
Yeah, and yeah, no, I love that you mentioned that too, because I know a lot of people who grew up in dysfunctional families and they have beautiful families and beautiful marriages because that's actually why they like wanted to create their own home and go
Correct.
far away from what they grew up in.
Hmm.
Like the opposite, right? Um, but yeah, what I really meant to say was that I'm just like grateful because I know how rare it is to actually grow up in like a healthy two-parent household, even though, like nobody's perfect, like,
Right.
but like I'm just always grateful for that because I know how rare it is. And I do feel like it, I mean, honestly, I could say that it made it easier, but I also had like my own toxic relationships and so
Right.
I don't know.
y'all
But
gotta learn. We all gotta learn.
yeah, I had another question, but I actually kind of wanted to change the question
Okay.
based on what you said. So, you mentioned your mom a couple of times and just like dealing, obviously, like with the passing of her and grandma, which we love so much. And we know she's probably here, like smiling over us doing this podcast together.
Mm.
But, obviously, ew, no crying. No, I don't want to say ew, but like, anyway, so,
It's
yeah,
okay.
so it's probably the coffee too, like
No, it's
spiking.
real. It's real.
I
That's
know.
what we want people to know. It's all good.
Yeah.
Mm. Hmm.
All right. Yeah, okay. I'm like, why did I go down this No, but
We're going with it.
obviously I know. But obviously, we're, growing up.
Yes.
I just can't think of like losing you one day.
Oh, baby. Oh.
Like like I try not to think about it, obviously.
Oh, honey.
But I guess my question was like, you know, with like, like obviously knowing that death is a part of life
Right.
and it doesn't mean, something that I always remember is that like I'm going to pass one day too.
Mm-hmm.
We're all going to be reunited one day,
Mm-hmm.
and that's something that like, you know, I like to hold on to is that like we're all going to be reunited one day. Like there is no like never again, it's always like see you later.
Right.
But obviously in this physical world, you miss that tangible
Right.
physical
Right.
relationship. So, when that day does come far into the future, what is it that you want me to remember and,
Mm.
our family and, my children? Like, what, yeah, what would you want us to know?
Mm. Wow. Okay. Yes, the tears is flowing today. Oh
I
my
had all
God.
these other questions. I'm like, wait, let's go
Oh,
down here.
wow. That's a beautiful question. You know, I think, when I think of grandma and I think of my mom, you know, she was such a beautiful soul, and she is a beautiful soul. She was the love of all of our lives. she just exuded love. She was such a gentle, quiet spirit. And oh my goodness, what is going on?
I know. Okay.
And I think looking back, I was a lot like you. I never imagined my parents passing. I was so naive. Like, they're
Yeah.
just going to be here forever. Like, it never crossed my mind that my mother would pass away so suddenly and so unexpectedly. And it was just such a shock to my system. And when I look back, I was literally just getting to know her. Like, I took it for granted, not asking all the things that I wanted to ask her today. Like, just wanted to know, what were her dreams? What was she like as a teenager? You know, I knew about how she fell in love with my father and how they met. I knew that story, but just, and I picture her sitting at that table. This is the image I have of my mother sitting at the kitchen table. She always had her coffee cup. She would make Senka. It's called Senka coffee. It's instant coffee, and she would always have her Senka coffee. And she would always just be sitting there, and she smoked. I hated that she smoked, but she did smoke. She'd have her cigarette. And she was so quiet. And I look back at that and I wonder what she was thinking about. What were her ponderings? What was her, what was she all about? And I think for me, for my kids, is I want you to know me. And I think I show you guys. I think that's probably why I raised you guys the way that I did, just in your face, chasing you. How are you feeling? What are you thinking? Where are you going? I mean, I was just in your life because I didn't, even though my mother, she was in her own way, but we just didn't get to know each other in
Mhm.
that way. And I think for me, with my kids, and with you as a daughter, is I want you to just know what love is. And I want you to feel loved, know that you're loved, to speak your voice. If I were ever, God willing, I'm going to be here for a long time. But I want you to know that you were loved. That's really what my biggest wish is that each of my children, as individuals, as their own personality, that I loved you, that you were loved, and that you are loved. That's really what I want you to know.
Uh, well, we definitely know that. That's for sure.
I
um,
hope so.
yeah, definitely. And yeah, and it's like you said, you already know, like how you choose to go, and that's gonna be late in, old age with dad, with your family around you, and God willing, right?
Feeling I have a vision of how that's gonna look, and I have
Yeah.
some grandbabies would be
Yes.
nice. Now I see my grandbabies, like I have me some grandbabies.
They're gonna
Uh,
be the best.
yes,
Um, healthy, happy. And I think that's why it's so important that you and dad, especially dad, like move to DR to just like
yeah,
dad looks like the happiest he's ever been. Like I
yeah,
remember like how stressed he was. Like
yeah,
his health did not look good. And I think that's always like the scary thing for like a kid.
sure.
Like seeing your parents like not look healthy. It's like
Mhm.
worrying. It's like, all you want for your parents is for them to be happy, healthy, you know, and, so you can have them forever, like you don't want them to engage in unhealthy activities or, nobody's perfect, right? But like you
Yeah,
want them to be healthy, happy. And a big part of that is stress. And I remember like how stressed he was. And so like knowing that like he's like a kid again in DR running around all day and,
yeah,
just living his best life and you're, coming into your own identity outside
right.
of being mother and getting into your writing and your
Mm,
podcast, which by the way, everyone listening, my mom is starting her own podcast. So listen in on that. More details coming soon. But
Yes.
my mom is the best. I'm sure even if you're listening to this, like she is, even for those who wish that they had that kind of relationship with their mom or whatever, like I know that my mom's podcast is going to be like that safe haven for you to kind of just get that nurturing, that wisdom, which is why you're doing it. So
That's awesome.
yeah. But my next question for you, mom, because you mentioned how like with your mom, you wanted to know like what were her dreams, what were her fondest memories, like what were
Mm.
things. Um, and so I want to kind of go into those questions. You ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, so I'm looking at my questions and I'm kind of trying to choose like which one I actually want to go through. Okay, so yeah, actually, you know, thinking of like your mom kind of and your parents kind of being the more quiet types, and even people who grew up in that same, they call it I forget what they called it, but
The latchkey kids.
latchkey kids, but what do they call the parents? Like they were pretty much silent because they went through so much trauma through the
Yeah,
historical events that they went through,
right.
right? So it's crazy to think about like
Mm,
just even America, and like you grew up in those historical events. Like imagine grandma and grandpa, like
right.
the racism, the
Yeah,
trauma that they
yeah,
probably have,
yeah.
right, that makes it probably very difficult to open up their heart.
Right.
um, and so I actually kind of want to ask you, like, what were some of the historical, I mean, I kind of know what historical events you lived through, but what was it like? Because, I was born in a time of like technology and,
Mm-hmm.
you know, uh, progressiveness. And it's still like there was that sense of progression back then. But like, what was it like growing up in that time? In
Mm,
like the 60s, 70s. Like I know the 70s were like a happy time apparently, but I don't know. Like I was born in
yeah.
like 1998, you got the 2000s, it's just completely different. So I want to like go back in time to when you were like a little girl. Like what was it like living in that time?
Mm. I mean, I'm not that old. Okay, first of all.
I don't mean like that. Like, oh, what was it like in that age? But
Yeah.
just like how different, like, do you feel like, what you went through
As
was it
far as
even like,
experiences, well, I gotta say, I,
I'm not that old.
yeah, I know. I'm like, wait a minute.
What
Um,
historical events did you live through? But it's
um,
true.
you know, it's really interesting that you asked me that question because I don't I really use this very lightly because I'm trying to choose my words. I feel like I missed that uh, um that part of my life in terms of the experience of my parents' experience, their lived experience.
Right.
I'm sorry, someone just keeps
Journey.
I thought these things were supposed to go to do not disturb. When you put do not disturb, that
Yeah,
the
people can
notification.
click notify anyway. So,
Oh, got you. Okay. But you know, I think those are questions I would have loved to ask my parents
right.
and their lived experience during those times. I think I experienced their quietness of their lived experience,
Right.
their pain, their suffering, whatever they went through. They never shared those experiences with me. I believe my father witnessed a lot, experienced a lot. My mother grew up in the South.
Oh,
Um, and, like I said, my mother didn't talk. So I don't know her lived experience with racism and things like that. And my father, was very, I used to call him the James Earl Jones. He just, very stoic, very, he's bigger than life. His whole energy just filled up our whole home. And I could tell there was a lot that he was battling with, because he not only, grew up in those times, and most definitely probably experienced a lot of racism. He also was in the Vietnam War. I think he joined when he was 17,
Oh my God.
into, Air Force. So, you know, and those are the things. It's like, those are the things that you wish you would have asked. And I still have my father, and we're now beginning to unpack his life, and he's only now in his 80s really being vulnerable and being willing to share those painful moments. Like, he just cannot watch any movie or any show that has the N word in it. Like, he doesn't care. Like,
Yeah.
he doesn't want to hear it. And it makes me get emotional, because I think to myself, how many times he heard that.
Yeah.
I think I heard it once in my life, towards me, some knucklehead kid in elementary, in passing, just said it out to me. And I remember how shocking it was to my system. And there's such ignorance. It's such an ignorant thing, that humans, that we can treat each other, no matter what color you are,
Mhm.
based on the color of your skin. It's just so small minded, and we're so much more than the color of our skin.
Mhm.
And, I so my lived experience, I was very sheltered. My dad was in the Air Force, so we grew up on Air Force bases, and we had different cultures in our home: white, black, brown, whatever have you. They were all from different backgrounds, and my parents never raised me to hate. They never raised me to know, um, you know, uh, they never taught me different colors of skin. It wasn't about that. It was about humans.
Mhm.
And my parents especially my dad, he just could connect with anybody, and I think that's something that I learned from my dad, is just accepting everybody, just accepting everyone. Um,
Mhm.
he just is that kind of person. So I don't know if I really answered your question, but
No.
I
That's
think,
good.
you know, I experienced my own, I don't know, it's kind of racism, kind of within my own race, which was
Yeah.
interesting to me,
Yeah.
because of the color of my skin, which I found very interesting. So my experiences negatively were more so within my own race,
Yes.
than it was from another, which I find then that's a whole other story. And that's a whole other thing to unpack, and why we do that with each other.
Yeah.
I think it's just kind of taught it's kind of like put in us to look at each other differently. And, but I'm not even going to go down that road
Yeah.
right
I
now.
mean, it all comes down to like pain, right?
Right. Hmm.
And like that's really where it comes from, is just pain. And the only thing that can really heal that pain is love. So um
Exactly.
yeah, I mean, I feel like the way that I asked the question was like the events that you lived through, but really knowing that, like, yeah, what was it like to be the daughter of
Hmm.
parents who went through that? Like, that's honestly effing crazy, right? Like,
Hmm.
it just is so, it's still, I say it's crazy because it's like we've made so much progress, but it's kind of like, it's not like it was mad long ago either. Like my grandpa is still living, like
Yeah.
it's kind of weird, but we're making progress and all of that. And, I know that you were military brat, like you say that, like, being brought onto all these different bases. And, I'm curious, like what that was like. I know you said that there was, so many different kids and,
Hmm.
different, everybody's just different, all of that. But what was that like for you? Just always kind of moving everywhere? Was that stressful? Was it fun? Did you feel like
Right.
you couldn't really make connections to people? Do you feel like how did that do you think shaped you? Like just
Mm.
always kind of moving around all the time, if that was the case?
Yeah, there were fun parts of it, and then there were the downsides because literally we would move every 6 months to a year whenever my father got stationed somewhere else. So you really didn't feel rooted or grounded. I think, because there were four of us. I have, two brothers and a sister, and I was the middle child. And, you know, I think we all handled it differently. I think my sister, she's very independent. She just, kind of goes out there and she gets her life. My brothers handled it very differently. You know, um, Both of them sort of had different ailments that kind of kept them limited in many aspects, that affected them. Now, for me individually, I think there was a bit of adventure in it because I did love the travel aspect of it. I loved getting in the car and we would drive and stop and, on the side of the road at a picnic table and eat cold chicken and, sodas and chips and just kind of have, it was just this freedom of just being on the road. Um, but I think this other part of me just was so, I didn't know my place. So, because there was always a new place. I think some individuals would have looked at it as an adventure, as far as, ooh, someone new to get to know and a new school and all of that. For me, it caused me to go more inward and more, and I was, because we were so sheltered growing up on a Air Force base. You literally were like in an like kind of like it was the base. That's what you lived on. There was a guard at the gate, with, their guns, and you couldn't get on without having to live there. And so the outside world was like freakazoid to me. Like, it was crazy when my dad retired and we went into the real world, so to speak. Um, and I was very sheltered. So I was very shy, extremely shy, like very shy. Like I just like would hide.
Mhm,
And I think it's affected me today. I think that's why I went into my books.
mhm.
I read a lot. I loved, fantastical books, anything that had to do with magic and all the things. And I wrote every day. I was always journaling on my thoughts, my feelings, and I think that's why I have, become a writer. Not that I became one.
I've always
It's
been one.
the natural progression that it was always in there, and it came out when I was older, as I am today. So I don't know if I answered your question, but
No,
yeah.
it's we're just having a conversation, but I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah, it's funny because like you've always been a writer, but like I don't know if you remember when we had those big ugly e-machines computer and there was like no Wi-Fi. So what would we do? We would play like the little Sudoku or like that, game like in the settings. Like, do you guys know, like listening to this, growing up, like the game in the settings, like the little poker game and like it's like those were the only games you had. So I would
You
pull up,
remember that?
of course I do.
Oh my
And I
goodness.
remember writing. I loved writing.
Wow.
Like, y'all listening, I wrote books, okay? Like books in the e-machine. Journey would write
Journey,
books.
you and Journey, like literally every single day. You were writing, she was writing story, always on her command. And I'm like, what happened? Maybe it'll show up later in life, but she just won't even write anymore. I know you journal a lot. I know you
It's
journal.
it's like it's just a reconnecting, I think, to that imagination, I think.
Yeah.
Because and it's funny like how like when I got into middle school, the stories changed and they were less like imaginative and mystical and they were more like I was like, I don't know, I've always been into like dark psychology and like just more of that stuff. That's what always like what I was into. And so I would create books around like more like just when I say darker things, nothing like crazy, but just like more real life things. And it would be, I would always have the music, like the soundtrack of like music would really get my brain going and kind of go into
Right.
it. But I feel like as you kind of grow up, if you don't nurture that, it's not that you lose it, like you can always reconnect to that. But I just felt like it was so much more like when I was little, where I mean, you remember with my videos, and I would just make all of these movies, and it was like, okay, you're going to be this, and this is what happens. And then we have the two sisters, Amber and Ember, and one of them is evil and they're twins. And one,
I
and
love
one,
it.
just like, just that kind of has always been there, that creative. And then as you grow up, it's not that you lose it, but you just become more, I don't know, like,
You're distracted more. You get busy with life, and
yeah,
that imagination, that's so fraught with life. And I think that's why, in the scriptures it says, become childlike, you
yeah,
know come like children. Because what are children? They're present.
yeah,
They're not trying, if they're being anything, they're imaginating. They're like, oh, I'm going to be this and you're going to be that, and we're going to create this world, and we're going to live in this moment, and it's exciting and it's wonderful. And we have forgotten, it's not that it's not in us still, it's not that it's not there. It's just that we're, the world that we live in is set up where it just constantly keeps us so busy, so distracted.
right,
Do, work, 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 get, chase, chase, chase. And I know that, kind of going back to what you were saying about your father and me, where, we both just have gotten tired. It's
right,
getting back to that, just play, and figuring that out, and not really concerning ourselves with, the getting of things, but really being, you know, like children again, and just allowing ourselves to, experience life in a way that is more receiving, and more allowing our imaginations, and stepping out on, what they say, faith, stepping out in faith, and the things that are scary and wonderful, and not so much of, let me do this so that I can get that. We did that. We've been there, done that. But I love that my kids, that you guys really have gotten such a, you know, uh, that you guys are doing those things now, and I think that we fed you guys that possibilities, possibilities, possibilities. And I think that's why you guys have been so successful in your life, because you still have that imagination, which I think can be practical as well. You can use that imagination to fulfill your dreams and your goals. So,
yeah,
uh, yeah,
yeah, definitely. That's how I, manifest. You gotta visualize, you gotta create.
you
If
got
you're too, oh, is that realistic? Honestly, like what determines what's realistic? Like what you see, what you think is capable, what's believable for you, right?
right,
Like just because you don't believe you can get that far, don't mean I can't. So you keep your limitations to yourself, right? But like
right,
I saw this quote the other day where and I also heard it on a podcast, but they were talking about how like we're already abundant beings, like we're already these light beings, like that's just what we are, but we create our own limitations. It's not that we are limited and then we need to attract abundance. Like we are already abundant, but we
right,
create limitations, so we have to like shut off the limitations, and then we will naturally just allow that stream of abundance to flow, because it's our birthright. It's just natural. It's like what we're that's our birthright. And I never thought of it that way. Like I always thought like you have to, earn abundance or become abundant or whatever. And you might, based on like your current situation, like you might have to remember that and do the shedding of like all the inauthentic
hmm
things that just don't, like they don't serve you anymore. The scarcity mindset or the fear that maybe you were conditioned with, right? But we were never born that way. We're not born fearful and scarce and with like limitations, and we're born the opposite, but we become conditioned.
right,
So um I'm by the way, for those listening, my mom has written and published her first book, her first young adult book, and it's in the works of like all of that. So send my mom like good energy,
Yes.
visualize it for her. And more on that soon. But like you're making it happen, mom, right? Like you're literally, which brings me to my next question, because I know you always say like your purpose in life was to be a mom, like your
Yeah.
purpose in life was to be a nurturer.
Yeah.
Cool. But like if you never had a family, right? Like maybe it was just you. Like in a parallel universe. Let's
Mm.
just play with this if we're going to talk about imagination. Okay?
Uh-oh. Okay, let's go.
Let's just play with it. A client asked me this the other day and I still was struggling to kind of like leave what my desires are. Like now I'm like, I don't really see myself, like in a parallel universe, like this is what I want. If we could just play with this idea of like in a parallel universe, you're in a parallel universe where maybe your destiny like wasn't to have a family, or your destiny wasn't to like have a bunch of kids and, be the matriarch, like that wasn't your destiny.
Hmm.
What do you feel like your life would look like?
Mm. Oof. Well,
Wow.
you know, before I had kids, it's so funny. My friends always said, I thought you were going to be the jet setter and traveling and doing all the things. And, um, you know, very much in the arts, very much in the arts. You know, I would love to sing like, like Mariah Carey, Whitney Houston, and I would love to, I just love everything about the arts, whether it's music, learning to play guitar, learning, I would just be traveling and meeting all different people, learning all the languages, because I want to just know people, in their you know where they're from, and how they live and how they think in their language, in their culture. Um, um, Writing, I think that's in me. I think that my form of communication to the world is going to be through writing, whether that is through books, on platforms, communicating. Um, but I look, that's an interesting question, because I love my life. And what I mean by that, trust and believe, I am going through it right now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, wait a minute. Okay. It's like, what is happening? This has been very challenging. But I wouldn't choose anyone else's life,
Mhm.
because what I have is everything I ever wanted, is my children. Which is, for me, like I said, I just believe that that's what I always wanted. Whether it was in a parallel universe, I believe that I just wanted to have children. Maybe I would do things differently in terms of how I perceived I could live this life with children,
Mm,
and still not limiting myself to going after my goals and dreams.
mm,
And I think as moms and as women, and I think that's why I'm moving towards supporting women who have raised kids or are raising kids, that they're not limited to that alone, which is a wonderful, beautiful uh gift and task, is raising children. But that's not all they are, and that's all not all that they can be. There's that they don't have to let go of their dreams. And I take this kind of full circle back to my mother, where this all started, and I get emotional because I wonder if she had dreams. And she was so quiet, and she raised us, but what would my mother, what was it that she desired, that she didn't experience? And because she had such a different lived experience then, and the opportunities were not as available as they are for us, And so there is this part of me that wants to honor her by figuring out and honoring what it is that wants to be birthed through me and making sure that I get it out there. I haven't figured it out yet. I know that writing is there. I know I got that book out. It's not published yet. I did submit it to a publisher. We shall see what happens if they get her, if they get my character and her story. I hope I communicated it well enough for them. But we shall see. But I think that I am being pulled and called to really heal those parts of me, um, and also my mother and my ancestors to come through, that maybe through me I can raise their voices, whether through writing platforms, helping other women to raise their voices and to find their voices and to express it in a way that honors them.
Love
um
it.
yeah, so I think,
Love
wow,
it.
that wasn't expecting that, but yeah.
Yeah, I it's interesting because when you say that, like I wonder what her dreams were and like what were her things, you know? It's like, okay, well, your children are literally connected to you. So like the things that want to be birthed through you, I believe, are the things that your parents' subconscious desires, since we are connected like genetically and like through our DNA. Like
Mhm,
not only do we hold those ancestral traumas and those generational things, but like we
mhm.
also hold those ancestral desires and those ancestral wants and desires and dreams. And so, you know, like my desires, right? Like even the things that I loved growing up were very similar to the things that you desired, right? So I could totally see even just grandma like,
Yeah.
girl, I will be jet setting, you know, traveling around the world. I could see her, you know, totally like into the arts as well, like, you know, just really soaking in the things and being in galleries and
I'm
just soaking
sorry.
in.
I'm sorry, honey. Your father was calling, and then the thing just kind of, it
Oh,
said 5 4 3 2 1. So I don't know if he interrupted the recording.
no, on my end it shows fine.
Okay,
So can
so mine is going 99%, 91%. I don't know what's going on. I told him I
yeah,
would call him when I was done. So I don't know what's happening. Hopefully
yeah,
it's still recording on your end.
it is. It says for me actual recording is higher quality. So yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
we're good. Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was saying that like it's like how you said, right? Like honoring those desires that you have coming through you. Because I'm sure a lot of those desires are the things that, you know, grandma may have would have wanted, you know? So yeah. You telling dad to stop.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing too.
Okay.
Okay. Did you do? I did the same thing. I'm like, stop calling.
Uh,
Yeah, people, that's my husband.
literally. But yeah, mom. So my last question for you is, yeah, I mean, I feel like we kind of went through everything.
Yeah, I have a
Um,
question. We can
oh,
end it
you have a
there. We can
question.
full circle it.
Okay. Yeah.
My question to my daughter is, what is the biggest lesson that you have learned uh, from us as your parents? And what would you say to someone that may not have a great relationship with their parents or with their mother? However you want to ask that.
Yeah. I love that question. I would say the biggest things, I mean, I've learned so much, like just like from both of you together. I would say the biggest thing that I've learned and continue to learn is, I would say, like my independence, like
Mm-hmm.
literally just, and I don't know if it's like oldest daughter syndrome, but like I've just always wanted to just go out into the world and like do what I need to do and be independent and create my dream life. I would say that the biggest thing that I've learned from dad is like, do no harm, but take no shit. Like, you
Right.
know, be strong, go out there, do what you need to do. Don't let people walk all over you.
Yeah.
Set boundaries, you know.
Yep.
He, even though he has his own cynicism with like the world, like I still always got from him that like you can make your dreams happen, you can do those things. And I feel like from you, I've learned honestly just like I don't think it's something that I've learned, but more so like who I am because of you, less of like what did I like learn. Like I feel like I've learned things from dad in the sense of like, okay, this is what I've learned, and like more of that masculine aspect.
Right.
But like from you, I feel like I felt like dad was always trying to like indoctrinate us into like excellence and you know, in a good way, right? But
Right.
like with you, I just felt like it was always, you were always obsessed with making sure that like we were good. You know, if you felt a shift in our energy, you would always ask us like, what's wrong? And it would like annoy us at the time. But like now that I'm older, like I'm obviously really appreciative of that. And so I feel like I learned from you just like love, period. Just, you know, loving others, treating others, you know, the same way you want to be treated. Not, you're like the most non-judgmental person ever. Like everyone says it, like all my friends like love you. And so I feel like the main thing that I've learned, obviously from dad too, but like it's just like that love and just like pure love, literally just loving others, loving life, doing what I love, you know, chasing my dreams, being in love, loving others. And obviously it's not all, it's easier said than done
Yeah.
sometimes, right? Like I think our ego is always going to come in and, you know, want to like not love people, but like I've learned from you just that love. And yeah, just like that love. And also I remember like, again, the independence aspect too. Like I really did learn from you. Cause I remember there was like one time when we were little, I was in the backseat of the car. Is when we lived in Margate, and you turned around and you're like, listen, you always want to have your own, like never, ever, ever rely on a man for like income or whatever, even if you love him, always have your own thing. And I was like, I remember being so little and being like, heard, like it just like
Wow.
clicked in my brain.
Remember that? Oh my gosh. I remember that moment. I don't know what was going on.
You were like, you turned around, you're like, listen, you better make sure you always have your own money. Like you never rely on a man for money. You never rely on him to like, you know, like we live in like a provider era, you know, men are supposed to provide, but like still have your own thing.
Yeah.
And so that like really stuck to me. And I don't know if that's because you were a stay-at-home mom and it was probably stressful, right? But just being like, you need to have your own thing. And I was like, okay. And so like I took that. So I feel like I also learned a lot of independence from you too. Advice I would give to somebody who maybe doesn't have that same relationship is that, you know, this is just what comes through to me is that like family doesn't need to be blood. Like it can be,
wow,
like there can also be like chosen family, I think, where it's like
100%.
you might always yearn for that relationship with, you know, your mom or your dad, or you might always have that question in the back of your head. But I listened to this podcast a while ago that kind of not normalized, but neutralized, where it's like, I mean, this kind of sounds a little bit cynical, but like they brought you into this world. Yeah. But I think sometimes we create like this, you know, like what could have been, or we might romanticize it, or, you know, like we look at other people's relationships and we want that. And also like you get to create that if it's not available for you with other people.
Right.
And that yearning might not ever go away. Like I can't imagine, like if I was in that position, like I might have that yearning for the rest of my life. Right. But I can create my own family and create that chosen family where I can get that cup filled. Um, and have that mother figure, father figure, who might not be like my biological parents, but like it really, if I was in that position, I would be thinking like that's just a title. Like, if I don't have that good relationship and they're not willing,
Right.
I'm just gonna have to like dead that and kind of this is my actual mother or my
Yeah.
actual father, my actual family that I choose because they actually show the characteristics of what family really is, which is caring, being there for each other. And I know a lot of people who have family and the family is the label, but they don't really like it's
Right.
not really like family. So that would be my advice there.
Oh, I love
But
that. And that's, I think, why it's so important to create, people are, getting into communities and finding communities. I love that you said that, because we're sharing experiences, and you know your chosen family that can be anyone. And you've got your Auntie Mishi and Auntie Rana and Selwa and my women, my people, who are your extended family. So you have more than just one mom. You know what I mean? Like, you're just, and grandma, and your Titi Loli, and Mildred and Melina, and all those women, that you can have, like you said, you chosen family, and
yeah.
your friends who are your support system. I think that's such a powerful statement you made, that about chosen family, because you may not have that. that's
Yeah.
that was awesome. I love it.
Yeah. And I know that like when I have kids and Gabby has kids and Danny and Kiki and like that's gonna be their titis is like Titi Gabby and like those are chosen
Yeah.
family, right? Where you see them as that. And yeah, so
Oh, honey.
but I loved this conversation. It was so good and everything I wanted and more. And it won't be the last
No, it will
either.
not. We are going to do this. I think we should keep it going.
Yeah.
And, like you
Maybe you
said,
have me on yours next.
yes, I'm going to have you on mine. I'm still, formulating. Right now, it is called the Big Ask. And so we shall
Yes.
see. And then, obviously, I'm going to continue to create space for women through my platforms, on, through Contemplative, and, creating, writing workshops, and, to help them tap into their passions and their spiritual sides and creative sides, so that we can delve into when I bring you on my show.
Yes,
I love you
exactly.
so much, baby.
I love you.
Awesome.
And yes, this was so fun and nice. And I wanted it to be like long too. So this is perfect. And yeah,
I think
so
we're going.
thanks for everybody for watching, listening. Would love to hear your takeaways, what you kind of got from this conversation, even if it was just like nice to listen to. But this is my mama, everybody, and she will be back on here. I'm already thinking about like Mother's Day special and like all the things I'm like already thinking about so much. But
Love it.
I love you so much,
I
Mom.
love you too.
I'm going to go ahead and stop this
All
recording.
right.
And yeah,
Goodbye. Love you.
okay. Hold on. Okay.
How do you